Y'all really went and did it this time. Y'all seriously narked on me. People went running to Dr. HINK telling him that I was shitting on him, that I was coming after him. And here's what I have to say about the matter. This is what I said. No, daily training isn't too much if that's what your body needs. This is the absolute undeniable truth. If anyone says training X days a week is the best, ideal, optimal, then they're a fucking idiot. And I meant that. I still mean that. I actually mean that harder now than I did 5 days ago when I released that YouTube video. I mean that 100%. And the seething hatred that I feel for the people that I'm talking about in that video is so ridiculously visceral and real to me. And I'll explain a little bit about why. So what I meant is that most people don't care about you. YouTubers, stock template coaches, and affiliate goblins, they just don't have you in mind when they make concrete and prescriptive and definitive recommendations. And if you have to join a coach's email list to get access to their secret sauce or their one weird trick, they don't give a fuck about you. I post every single technique and methodology that I use in coaching here on YouTube and on Reddit. If you didn't want me as a coach, but you wanted my coaching, you could quite literally do it yourself with everything that I've put out. If all someone ever does is spam recommendations from brands that they're affiliated with and making money off of, they don't care about you. If they did, they'd recommend things even if it didn't make them money. For example, anytime anybody ever asks me about what vacuum cups I like or what vacuum cups, I recommend Total Man cups. I don't sell Total Man cups. I don't make any money off of selling Total Man cups. I don't make any money off of him making money off of Total Man cups. Anytime anybody asks about compression hanging, I recommend Male Hanger. I don't make money off of Male Hanger. I don't make money off of Male Hanger making money. The reason I recommend it is just because it's the best compression device, not because I make money off of it. And so when people only recommend things that they are affiliated with and get paid to recommend, you should start to be a little suspicious. Because the fact is that I make the Apex Extender and the Apex Stealth ADS, and I don't even necessarily recommend them over other extenders. They all pretty much do the same thing. The only real thing that you have to consider is build quality. Some extenders are just pieces of shit, and they will break, and they will fall apart. And they're not made for you to leave in your will to your children, like the Apex is. Anyways, my point is, I don't get paid for making those recommendations, and I still make them. With regards to YouTube, if your YouTube guru has only ever read one PE study in their entire life and it's glaringly obvious because of their content, and their content is mostly based off of their subjective experience and what worked for them, and they repeatedly make recommendations and frame them as factual and concrete, then they don't care about you. However, HINK never does any of that. A lot of you took the last video that I made to be about Dr. HINK, and it wasn't. Here's what HINK actually says regarding the question that I got in the last video. Should I train 5 days per week? Is that too much? And about the question, how many days per week is optimal for training? Depending on your routine, I don't think you need rest days and can comfortably train 7 days per week. Interesting. I wonder if there's another person in the PE sphere who also trains their clients 7 days per week and adjusts each session to be completely optimally optimal. So while I don't have my clients hang or extend every single day, they do some type of PE every single day. This is typically in the form of recovery pumping, but the fact is they're still training every single day, with strategic recovery placed in their training to decrease stress and increase recovery. Arguing with HINK's statement would be like me arguing water isn't wet. It's an objective and factual statement. You can train 7 days a week if your routine is optimal, but your routines are rarely ever optimal. What HINK didn't say is, you should train 7 days per week. You should hang 3 hours. This is the only thing that works, and it works for beginners, intermediate, and PE pros. You should only use these products because they're the best because they make me money. No, HINK didn't say any of that because intelligent people that actually give a shit about you don't talk like that. Here's what experts in their field actually say. According to the data tends to show X. Anecdotal evidence demonstrates X. What we believe is happening is X. So no, I wasn't going after HINK at all because his statement is objective and factual. You absolutely can train 7 days per week if your program is optimal. You can train 14 times per week also. You can also train 100 times per week. The key thing to note in that statement is the operant word if and how it relates to the word optimal. So here's where science actually meets practice, because there is a difference in science principle and science practice. Nobody actually believes in a thing as no recovery. Pretty much everybody, unless you're a flat earther, realizes that you need recovery. Here's an objective statement for you. You cannot apply adequate training stress that causes adaptation responses indefinitely. At some point, the training stressor must cease in order for the body's recovery to begin. So yes, I am quoting myself there, but I'm quoting myself more than likely quoting Science and Practice of Strength Training, which was written by Vladimir Zatsiorsky. It is a strength training manual out of the Soviet sports science program that was done in the 1960s. And that's where 95% of the training stuff that we know about and how it eventually results in strength actually comes from. So I'm not quoting myself because I'm not an expert. I am quoting an expert. So the fact is, you can't train 24/7. You need to rest, period. Everybody can at least agree on that. What people argue about online and get hung up about is the duration of rest that you need between training stressors. So here's another objective fact. Training and recovery must occur at an equal volume and intensity in order to progress, and the recovery needed will be directly proportional to the intensity of the training. That is me actually quoting myself. But it's a statement based on literally everything that we have available to us on the topic of applying stress strategically to cause an adaptation response in the body. So what does that actually mean though? So in English, it means if you train with pull-ups and air squats, you can likely train every day, probably twice a day, because the intensity of lifting your body weight just isn't that high. Even if you absolutely burn yourself out on a set of push-ups or pull-ups, 12 hours later, you're going to be perfectly fine to go ahead and do some more. However, if you blast your legs and can't even walk out of the gym, it's going to be another 48 to 72 hours before you can even think about training again. This demonstrates the amount of recovery and rest needed is directly proportional to the intensity of the training stressor. So neither Doc HINK nor myself, and I really hope nobody else would ever recommend just going as hard as possible 100% of the time, all the time. In HINK's example of where he's talking about training 7 days per week optimally, he is likely having his people do less volume and intensity per session than I have the guys that I coach doing. And again, this is where science principle differs from science practice. And HINK and I have actually talked about this before. We've talked about the limitations of the scientific data. Scientific data does not equal universal fact. There are several different limitations to scientific data. Some of the studies that are done very poorly. Some of the studies that should be done aren't done, and they're never going to be done. Most of the studies are extremely short term. So we don't actually know how PE plays out in terms of long periods of time outside of the first year. And lastly, controlling for variables in even the best of situations and the best of studies is a really involving task. And that's on a relatively simple concept. It's nearly impossible for you to guarantee the validity of a lot of these studies because the fact is a ton of them are short term, small sample size that don't account for lifestyle factors. Do you train? Do you do your cardio? What's your nutrition like? And again, I'm not saying all studies are like this. I'm just saying a lot of studies are. Like if you're not a person who actually knows what a medical study is like and how it's carried out, you would be shocked to see what all goes into it and the utter chaos that you're trying to control to get to the other end where you can actually put something on a piece of paper that's usable, that actually means something to some people in a very particular circumstance. And that's if everything has gone really well for you, is that you end up with a study that says, hey, we can 100% confidently recommend and say that maybe this is possible in this people group under these very stringent circumstances. So no, as much as you guys wanted me to start shit with Dr. HINK, I'm not. It ain't gonna happen. And I will gladly keep hating on these YouTubers, cookie cutter program coaches, affiliate goblins who make these truly irresponsible and self-serving recommendations that don't consider individual factors for as long as I'm on social media, however. The last thing I want you to consider is this. In order for me to gather enough data to be an effective coach for the guys that I train, I have them fill out a health history and feedback form that tells me everything about them from their history in PE, a general health history, what they've done in PE before that's worked and that hasn't worked, their sleep, their sex, their training, their nutrition, their grandma that's weirdly hot. And we actually have a video call after I get the intake form where we talk more about all of this. I get tons of measurements. And then I typically introduce them to new measurements that I want and new ways of measuring. And then, like I said, we get on the video call and we talk about sleep, sex, training, cardio, nutrition, training, mindset, mood, motivation, and literally everything else that you could think of. And the thing is, this all happens before their first program is written. The fact is, this is just the amount of work that's necessary for somebody to effectively recommend to you what's going to be optimal in terms of principles and practices for optimal gains. You simply cannot make precise recommendations about male enhancement without investigating tons of health history and lifestyle factors, as well as past experience. So just think about that the next time your favorite influencer makes a recommendation, whether it's something to buy, something to do, or whatever. Speaking of influencers, if you're interested in coaching or consultations, click the link down below in the description. And as always, visit www.massivenovelties.com for all your male enhancement equipment needs.